Well, Chris, you're beginning to see this argument a little bit as well in another venue. There's been some discussion in Charlottesville between the mayor of Charlottesville and some council people in Charlottesville and UVA, because some of the elected officials in Charlottesville are saying these UVA students are going to come back in from all over the world and all over America. And what might they be bringing to Charlottesville? They're not so happy about all the students coming back and living in their town in a month or two. So that's another kind of twist on what might be happening here as well.
Well, it would seem to me advisable to do. We have a young man who graduated with our youngest son who just went into the Navy this week, and he's going to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel. They said, bring 3 books, and that's it. And so they're quarantining people out of the gate because they're not stopping their operations either. I wonder if it's going to be logical for some of these students going back to college to go early, get into their rooms early and basically quarantine so they don't do that. So they're not the super spreaders that we would hope them not to be.
No, I mean, that's going to be the big challenge for the colleges and universities, almost all of whom, even if they're having classes virtually, want most of the students back on campus. And so the question there is, can colleges be a relative bubble, or are they going to wind up being a petri dish? And no one quite knows right now, but that is, so we've seen some schools around the country basically saying, no, we really don't want to have people come back. We've seen that with a lot of California schools. Others are going to say, well, we'll bring back half the class for one semester, for part of the semester, half the class for the other part of the semester. In Virginia, most of the public universities are hoping to have, almost all of the students come back on site. And that is going to be, that's going to be their challenge going forward if a month from now we haven't done a little better in knocking out the virus throughout the rest of the state.
Well, it seems like out of an abundance of caution, if they're going to bring kids back on campus, they might want to consider a quarantine time so that everyone gets a handle on this thing. I'm afraid that, especially because, look, these universities, those who can not have students on campus are going to, because they don't have to. They're wealthy enough, they have a big enough endowment, they can withstand it. These other schools that are living off vapors when it comes to their endowment and alumni donations and state support, they have to bring kids back on campus to have that room and board support their overall mission. It's just financial decision. It's an economic decision, and that sort of
it's even tuition. I think that in these instances, because there's some students, if it's all online, they'll take a gap year.
Absolutely.
Even if they don't have great employment opportunity right now, they may not want to come back when they could wait a year and come back. And that's particularly true, I think, of what you might call the non-flagships there. And so, my sense is that they're really interested in having the kids on campus. And then secondly, even when you think about universities, they have some of the same challenges you have in K-12 with sort of class differentials in terms of acquaintance with and capacity to do online learning in that sense. And, I knew I just left the VCU board, and we had surveyed students about their happiness with online learning over the last couple of months after the school basically sent students home. And what we found is that there's a significant portion of students who weren't very comfortable with online learning, that there are a number of students who are really comfortable, who like it, who enjoy it, who don't find any issues with it. And then there are other students who are less comfortable right now.
What percentage, Bob? What are you looking at?
I think you're looking at, let me just say, it's hard to say for sure what that would be. But the business model for higher education is about to change, because that portion of the students are going to be completely comfortable learning online and not going to a college campus and incurring those other costs going forward. I think there's going to be more and more of that as the schools get better, Chris, as well, at doing online education. So that's the other issue that's here. My sense is that when you have good online education, particularly for, dedicated university students, when you have the curriculum that's set, when you have great, sort of, when the class is organized well, when all the assignments are organized well, when the faculty member is comfortable with it, all of that, I think, works extremely well in many instances.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, when you just start it up, and people may not have been, when the faculty member wasn't expecting to do it, when the students were thinking they were having another kind of education, when all of a sudden they're thinking about when am I going to get the hands-on experience with the labs. And if that hasn't been fully thought out and you had to just do it rapidly, you're going to have some level of discomfort. So I think you're right, because more and more, I think students want it both ways. They like on-site instruction, but they also want all the class online as well. I think, remember when we were growing up, if you were skipping a class, you would try to arrange so somebody would have you take notes for you. Remember that?
Oh, gosh, absolutely.
Yeah, and so now no one wants to ask somebody to take notes. They want the faculty member to have those notes online.
Oh, and in the slide, and recorded,
Right, that's expected now. So the expectation is there, and I think you're right that we're going to have more and more higher education and professional development that's going to be online. The question is, when you just do it right away, and you do it with faculty who weren't expecting it and the like, the quality can suffer a little bit.
Well, it's going to suffer a little bit, but this is going to be a reckoning, in my estimation, for the business model for most higher education institutions, because they can scale. I mean, if I'm in, say, Roanoke, and I don't want to go to VCU, I can take Bob Holdsworth's class online, and so can anyone in the world. And
right.
that becomes an opportunity for a lot of colleges who have the talent like a Bob Holsworth or at UVA, a Larry Sabato, and that's where the competition really becomes difficult for some of those who don't have the established names and brands that people really want and are willing to pay for. Because when Harvard said we're not going to give you a discount for learning online, they can do that because they're Harvard, right?
Right.
It's still a Harvard degree on the background. So
well, yeah, and I can tell you that all the schools that are going online now, they're going to deal with student protests about the tuition rates.
They should. It's legitimate.
Students are going to say, why am I paying these rates? That's the other issue that's going to occur. It's going to be much more challenging to maintain the rate because the students are going to be asking for various kinds of discounts. We've seen it a little bit already. I think we're going to see it in a more organized form come this year.
Absolutely. And, that's part of the marketplace. Once you flatten the reality of this thing, what's the differentiation between, one college to the next when it comes to learning some basic stuff? So these colleges and universities are going to be, they're going to have to redo their entire business model and find an area of differentiation that says it's important to get this degree from this university versus going to Purdue online because they have the Kaplan model and they're blowing it out. And does it really matter to employers? I can tell you flat out, no.
No, well, it depends which employer and what place. But I think you're right. I think the majority, in many instances, the majority of employers want to know that somebody has some basic knowledge, can read, write, work with other people. Mm-hmm. There are some areas where you really need the tech. You're going to have to pass a CPA test to get an accounting degree. Right. But in many instances, where there isn't a clear differentiation in terms of the pedigree of the degree, one degree can be as good as another. And I would tell you now, Chris, I would guess that if you looked at master's degrees in teaching right now, I would guess that 30 to 50% of these nationally come from online institutions. Mm-hmm. On that front. That I could be wrong, but my sense is that a lot of the teachers are, they have families. Sometimes they have young kids. It's not too easy to go to, travel 20 miles and back and forth at 6 in the evening to get a master's degree. But you can work 2 to 3 hours on the computer at home after you put the kids to bed. and be able to do that. So there are a number of degree areas where it's far easier to do this. And then, as you said, there's particular locations that people have where they can't access universities very, very easily, particularly if they're thinking about going to school in the evening, if they're working during the day. And online programs are a godsend for these folks.
Absolutely. And my daughter, because she's in an American university master's program for counterterrorism and homeland security, has never stepped foot on campus. And she's taken most of this while she's with her husband down at Camp Lejeune, he's in the Marine Corps. You know, this is the way of the world going forward. And those universities that don't get with the program are going to be left behind in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we established a master's degree in an online master's degree in Homeland Security in VCU probably 6 or 8 years ago, particularly for that reason. So you can find ways of doing that, and universities who can't, access that marketplace are going to have a lot of trouble down the road.